I just keep calling on the help of my peers, but their success makes me distressed. Things will be better when I disappear, bouncing from city to state. Nothing feels great, I'm a committed disgrace. If I could get up, hold my chin up, confidence is just a bluff for the weak. Might take a peek in my self-pity to realize it's selfishness for the meek. Just take these pills, it makes it better, but withdrawals will make you seize up and tweak. You gotta buy it every month, we change the brand, it's more expensive this week. I'll hold my chin up, keep this grin up like my mother, she can worry like me. But if I have you, life is worth it, love is more than a contagious disease. I think of you, I think of me, a family, is this another pipe dream? But if these dreams mean anything, I'm gonna think whatever I want to think. I just can't convince myself to look. Why can't I be strong in the place where you read your books? I just can't rely on happenstance. Didn't say goodbye before you died, I should've took that chance. But you'll never leave me, no, my heart is bleeding, and I know this feeling's not fleeting. Your hugs were the best thing, just wrapped up in your strength. I'd give up to be there right now. I just want you back, we all want that. I just wish that you hadn't forgotten. I hate this disease, I hate human beings. We fall apart before we get broken. I just can't believe you're not here with me. We should be out back sitting underneath that willow tree. Talk and I'd be listening. I didn't take the time to read your mind before you forgot me. Okay. But you'll never leave me, no, my heart is bleeding, and I know this feeling's not fleeting. Your hugs were the best thing, just wrapped up in your strength. I'd give up to be there right now. I just want you back, we all want that. I just wish that you hadn't forgotten. I hate this disease, I hate human beings. We fall apart before we get broken. Lock myself in my room to listen to voices recorded. Don't walk outside to avoid being avoided. This feeling that comes with not having a purpose. If I find something soon, maybe I won't feel so worthless. I've always felt this rhythm, but I thought it'd be pointless. Playing music that's for rich folks, not a prophet of poignance. Pointless is a feeling that comes over me often. Though I keep going for a fear of not affording my own coffin. I know I sound sad, but I've got to be honest. helps me change, then I have to. Not even for me, but everyone that I matter to. I've got this feeling life won't always be like this. My dad said to me, it's your calling, your purpose. Walking through this life like a man with no shadow. Always by myself, just trying to find my way. I've got no idea of how to get this thing started. Looking for a way out never got me by. I'm so scared and I don't know what to do. All this medicine does is hide the truth. How could you be happy if you've got nothing to prove? So get up and get out there, son, what you got to lose. Walking through this life, forgetting strife in the rear view. Don't prolong the pain, I owe myself more than that. If I learned my lesson, could I go back to high school? Tell myself to have some fun, don't be so pent up. I'm so scared and I don't know what to do. All this medicine does is hide the truth. How could you be happy if you've got nothing to prove? So get up and get out there, son, what you got to lose. Lock the door and run hot water. My sights are skewed, forgive me, Father. Sent you a text over dramatic. Got the response I wish I hadn't. I feel ashamed beneath my sleeves. Too much has changed, I have to leave. I love my family, I love my friends. And as for you, some good things end. I've made mistakes, I wish I hadn't. Things don't just change, we make them happen. I proved a point, forgave my father. Became less bitter, cause love is softer. I think I'm going off the deep end. I think I took a left when I should've took a right at the bend. I think I'm looking at the wrong trends. All these different people around me and they're calling me friend. Come on man, let's just pass the time. From amphetamine to weed, all it takes is a drive. And it's alright, I got you this time. Let's just pick up something quick, I want out of my mind. I think I'll look into some new friends.
Welcome, everybody. It is a SchuBros kind of night. We are here. It is the 24th of September. I just failed a test miraculously, horribly badly. So we're going to sob about it and talk some politics tonight and see what's going on in the world. Kyle, how are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm still alive, still well, still kicking. Having a little fun over here in the Bryan College Station community. Trying not to get myself in any trouble, but I'm bad about not doing that. So probably getting myself in a little bit of trouble. Not by like in any kind of like law stuff, but just stepping in little arguments that I probably don't need to be in, but can't help myself.
So yeah, I feel you there. Today has been a day of stepping in some arguments. I took the day off to try to study for a test, and unfortunately, Twitter was set ablaze, of course, because yesterday we had the news that Breonna Taylor case, that none of the officers are going to be indicted actually for her death. Nobody's being indicted on murder or manslaughter charges yet. I'll preface that with yet. The investigation is continuing, so there could yet come more indictments. But right now, the only thing we have is one officer is being charged with wanton endangerment for firing his pistol randomly, which, okay, that at least sounds like a legitimate charge. He fired his pistol randomly 10 times and some of those bullets went into a neighboring apartment. So he wasn't aiming, he wasn't identifying a target positively, and he was then wantonly endangering other people's lives. I agree with the charge there. But yeah, Twitter's been set ablaze. So Kyle, what have you heard on this? What's your take on it so far?
So I'm shocked and amazed. I just saw the Astros Rangers score, and the Astros are killing the Rangers 10-0.
Shocking.
So mercy rule.
Shocking.
Mercy.
I don't want to talk about the Rangers anymore this year. They went on like a 12-game losing streak, and I was over it.
Yeah, dude, it's been bad. I don't know, man. It's crazy. I'm seeing a lot of people, with the signs asleep in her bed, and there's significant amount of proof that she was not in her bed. Like, I don't believe she should have died. I want to get this out and open first and foremost. I don't believe she did anything that warrants her death.
Yep.
I wish and pray that she was still with us here today so that she could tell her side of the story. I think that there's definitely some room for, not just some room, there is some need for police reform, but under the laws that are in place in the state of Kentucky, I don't see them getting those cops on anything else other than wanting, what they got him on. They might kowtow to the mob pressure and charge him with something else, but right now it looks like they, if a jury of 12 has ruled based on the evidence that was presented that the cops didn't really didn't commit murder. Not I'm saying they didn't do anything wrong, because someone's dead. So obviously something happened that didn't go right, but they're not culpable of the murder, especially when they're not the ones who started the firing. It was on the boyfriend and not the ex-boyfriend. And see, that's where the confusion becomes, because Breonna had an ex-boyfriend who was a drug dealer. But she had, from all accounts that I can find, she had left that life behind and was trying to start new with this new boyfriend. And, all power to her for doing so. But she was still tied to the ex-boyfriend, and the ex-boyfriend, and the current boyfriend said part of the reason that he shot was he thought it was the ex-boyfriend and his crew coming to try to get money out of them because they felt they owed them money or drugs or something. I don't know exactly, the whole story.
Like with every other one of these cases, there's a lot of conflicting information and there's a lot of biased information, right? There are people who are putting information out to try to make it seem one way, make it seem another, to make the cops look great, to make the cops look worse. I think it's a situation where I think the cops had a valid reason to be there. I think the warrant, okay, there was a signed warrant. There was,
and her name was on the warrant.
It wasn't the wrong address, it wasn't anything of that sort. The warrant was issued towards her, so they were going to that house. Now, I would argue there was no need for a no-knock warrant because they did not pose a immediate threat to anybody. I don't know that they were suspected of, that anybody was at risk of dying because of them. If it's drug charges, that's one thing, okay, it's drug charges. And if they're found with drugs or whatever else, great. But there are people like, oh, well, you need to go in the middle of the night, otherwise they'll flush the drugs. It's like, no, you just wait for them to leave the house, right? Like if you have a warrant, if you have a search warrant, you just wait for them to leave the house and you go search the house, or you arrest them on their way out of the house. Like they're going to leave. Just arrest them when they leave, pick them up in the street, and then take them back up into the house, show them the warrant, and then search the house. They can't flush shit if they're in handcuffs. It's just, again, it's like the George Floyd case. Well, he's a resisting arrest. Why wasn't he in handcuffs at any point? If he had been in handcuffs, he wouldn't have been resisting arrest. But for some reason, I don't get it. And I'm here to say, look, I'm not saying Breonna Taylor was innocent because maybe she did something. Who knows? But I'm saying that doesn't require her death, and that even if she was, let's say she was selling drugs,
still doesn't require her to die.
There's nothing in the Kentucky, criminal statute that says the cops can shoot. I am still, in my mind, I'm trying to justify how the cops were able to shoot into a room without positively identifying their target. That is the biggest hurdle for me.
That's the biggest thing right there is that and that's where they got the guy on the charges wanting abandonment. It's they need to take their time and actually identify a target instead of trying to play army man and shooting over their head and bullshit.
Again, I'm going to go back to I trained people to deploy overseas. Although never deploying overseas myself, I trained people to do that. So I can tell you from the letter of the law what the Army was trained to do. Now, is it exactly what the police force is trained to do? No, maybe not. But I can argue that it's probably very similar. And I can tell you that in the Army, you are not allowed to shoot at an unidentified target, something that you don't know what it is, because
there's some very strict rules of engagement. Like you can't just have bullets whizzing by and being able to return fire. You've actually got to have been shot at. There's some pretty strict rules of engagement when it comes to the military, and it is honestly something that might need revision too, because when you're facing a real opponent that wants you dead, you need to be able to respond in kind before they found you.
For my point of view, from my perspective, and I'm just going to tell you where I'm at on this. I as always, I reserve the right to change my mind if new information comes to light. But at this moment, here's where I am. Supposedly this happened around 2 a.m. in the morning is when the house was raided. There's now information that it's possible they knocked and announced themselves, that one of the neighbors has said, hey, we heard them knock, we heard them identify themselves. But that doesn't mean that the boyfriend inside the room heard it. It also doesn't mean that if he heard it, that he was able to validate that they are actually cops and not somebody impersonating police. Google people impersonating police and stealing or pulling people over and stealing their cars or taking them hostage or whatever else. It's a non-zero effect, right? So it happens. I'm not saying that was the case here, because obviously it wasn't. They were actual police, but that person didn't know that, could not verify that, could not 100% know that that was occurring. So, to my knowledge, he fires one shot in this entire ordeal. I haven't heard anything more. He fired a shot. He hit a police officer in the leg.
I hadn't heard anything different either, but it was the first shot.
So it was the first shot.
Does one shot warrant 10, 15
so
shots?
that's what I'm about to question, because and guys, if you have new or different information on this, please post it in the chat, because we're happy to hear it. We're happy to look at new information, but this is where we are. This is where I am. I'm not speaking for Kyle. This is where I am right now, coming on a guy that's adamant about civil liberties, that's adamant about protecting our ability to stave off the government. So for me, I put myself in this situation. If it was my front door being knocked in, what do I do? And the answer is, at 2 a.m., if you're knocking in my front door, I don't care if you're yelling police. If you're knocking in my front door, I've got a 45 ACP, and as soon as the door is breached, I'm unloading into the fatal funnel. That's just how it is. I'm then going to retreat to the next fatal funnel, reload and or switch weapons, and get ready again for the next breach. And I've got it, my house is specifically set up that it's just a series of fatal funnels to where I would get you back to where my wife and kids finally are, which is the point of less egress. And they're in solitude, right? There's one entry, one exit from that room. You can only come in and out of that building. But
you're using a term that is familiar to myself and yourself.
Okay, so fatal funnel means
not be
like a doorway. A doorway is a fatal funnel, meaning that you have to come through this point. I now know exactly where you're going to be and can aim to that point. I don't have to worry about you coming from a different direction, and I know that I'm going to choke you into this area, making it easier to aim at you, making it easier to point a gun and just pull the trigger without having to worry about, where my bullet is going. I've got you somewhere that I know I want you. So
think about the 300 movie, which is based on a real
choke
event.
It down to a small area.
They choked them down to that very narrow pathway
where it was.
So the might of their gigantic army became however many people they could fit down that pathway.
Exactly. So you're not going to be able to bull rush me. You're not going to be able to come at me from multiple angles. So the way I'm looking at it right now is, okay, the police were in an exceptionally hard. We still need to know who signed the no-knock warrant, what the justification for the no-knock warrant is. I'm still 100% against no-knock warrants. I do not think no-knock warrants should be allowed in this country. I think they should be illegal, and I think we should get rid of them. That's my opinion on the matter. I understand element of surprise, but there's not.
I'm right there with you, buddy, and I'm happy and disgusted. I'm happy that Rand Paul, of all people, put it forward. I am disgusted with the way they treated him and the fact that he was trying. They demonized him for trying to put forward, and not the right, the left. The left says you're just trying to take advantage of a political situation, and just attacked him and went after him and wouldn't even bring it to a vote. I mean, Rand Paul is I'm not going to say the man is the most brilliant person ever, but the dude is very fiscally and mentally sound, knows his shit. Got it from his daddy.
So
dude's got it going on when it comes to like knowledge and shit. And the fact that they treated Rand the way they've treated him, it's just
they're going to treat any budget hawk that way, right? It's always budget hawks always get treated that way. And there's some room where like Rand and I would disagree, especially when it comes to like some of the military budget things. But he's at least he's a budget hawk. At least he's a guy who wants to get spending under control. He's not one of these guys who is going to go to Keynesian economics and say, "Oh, spend, churn the economy and blah 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 blah," because it doesn't work in reality. We've seen that. If it worked in reality, we wouldn't have a $23 trillion deficit or $26 trillion deficit now. We would have no deficit if we could spend, and push the economy up to this level and then always just get the money back out of it in taxation. We wouldn't be in a deficit. Eventually, we'd get the money back out. And it's one thing to spend at some point in time when there's a recession or something like that and try to spur the economy. But when the economy's good, like Rand has said many times, you then have to scale back on your spending and try to get that money back, and we've never done that. We've just kept spending and spending and spending and spending and spending. And yeah, I mean, they go, oh, the deficit's rising now faster than it's ever risen under Trump. Well, that's, again, that's not, if you compound interest, over years and you start, it turns parabolic, right? So we're not paying our principal back. We're just paying the interest charges, but while consistently taking out larger and larger sums of money and deficit financing that money. So we're adding more. So that money then makes the deficit grow every year because we have a larger interest payment to make every year. We're never paying any of that principal off. So eventually, the goose is cooked. But back to the Breonna Taylor case, and I want to preface this as my opinion alone, and you can agree or disagree if you want. To me, I'm still, again, they say, well, he fired the first shot. That means the cops were acting in self-defense. I don't agree. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think he firing the first shot shows that he was acting in self-defense. You gotta say that, if somebody's entering your house, I'm not waiting for them to shoot at me before I'm going to shoot at them, right? Once my door gets broken down, I'm shooting. I'm not waiting. I'm not going to wait to get shot at. If I've got to wait to get shot at, this isn't Obama ROE, right? This isn't the Obama rules of engagement. Like, remember that scene from, Black Hawk Down? Well, how do you know when they're shooting at you? Well, like there, that's how you know. We shouldn't have to do that in our own homes. If somebody's breaking down your door at 2 a.m., you should be allowed to assume that person has ill intent for you, and therefore be allowed to take the steps for precaution. So we can't have two things be simultaneously true. We can't have the right to self-defense be...
Yeah, you can. You can have two things be simultaneously true at all times.
Okay, in other worlds, yes, but not in this case. Not in this case, two things can't simultaneously be true.
Why not?
We cannot have that no-knock warrants are the best option, and also...
Okay, well, yeah, but we're not disagreeing on that.
And that we have the right to self-defense, because a no-knock warrant is going to lead to a self-defense reaction. Right? That's the entire point of a no-knock warrant, is that you're not announcing yourself. You're coming through the door. Well, if you're coming through my door at 2 a.m., again, I'm going to assume you're coming through for malintent, which means I'm going to utilize force in order to stop your malintent with my intent.
I was going to say two things can be true. Is the fact that him shooting the cops was self-defense, and them returning fire was also self-defense. Those two things can be true at the same time, because the cops don't know him from Adam, because I don't even know if he was listed. I mean, yes, it was his place, but they had Brianna on the docket. I don't know if they were actually looking for the new boyfriend or not. I think they were looking for Brianna, the ex-boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend's drugs, etc., etc. So two things can still be true. Now, had there not been a no-knock warrant in the first place, if they'd shown up at like 6 in the afternoon, 7 a.m. in the morning, things probably would have gone a whole lot differently. Waking somebody up at 2 a.m. in the morning, busting a door down, yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm going to be defending myself too.
So let's preface that other side of this with, okay, so last night, after the indictment came down for wanton endangerment, 2 police officers were shot in Louisville. I'm not excusing that whatsoever. Yep. That man should go to jail, and the cops absolutely should have the right to defend themselves on that point. I'm not, I had a guy argue with me all day that if you're just respectful to the cops, you won't get killed. The Breonna Taylor case is not that scenario, right? Okay, if I get pulled over by the cops, if you get a regular traffic stop, I perfectly agree. Put your hands on the steering wheel. Be respectful to the police officer. And 99.999999999 with a little line over it % of the time, nothing bad will happen. The Breonna Taylor case is not that case, right? This is the exception to the rule. They knocked his door down at 2 a.m. We have to be able to say there's a line, right? That one case is not the other. We can't argue that all things are equal here. So I don't want to see any cops get killed. I don't want to see riots. I don't want to see them burn down. I do personally like what the Kentucky AG did. I don't know if you saw kind of how he did it. He sent all the evidence to a grand jury and allowed the grand jury to make the decisions on whether or not to place indictments. That means the grand jury is an elected position, right? So these are their peers.
No, it's a grand jury is just a normal jury. It's just that they serve for like a 3-month period or 6-month period or something of that nature, but they're still selected from the community, a pool of 12. So I was on a grand jury pool. I did not get selected. And then I went into a normal jury pool and I did get selected. So that's the 2 times I've been called for jury duty that didn't get canceled. So I'm at 50% for getting selected for jury duty.
So
Now that's Texas.
yeah.
I'm speaking for Texas. I'm not gonna sit here and say I know how Kentucky law works and how Kentucky court system works, because it might be different. It might be the same. I honestly don't know.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling, okay? So again, I'm going to say this. It's well, and Dan John, it's not a not guilty verdict. Again, they haven't issued any indictments related to the death yet. That doesn't mean it won't happen. It still could. The Kentucky Attorney General said, look, more evidence could come to light. We still have things to review. We'll submit that to the grand jury. Things could happen. So we have an indictment for wanton endangerment. That's pretty much a slam dunk case. That guy's probably going to jail at least for a little bit of time. Not very long, mind you, because it's a lesser charge. It's not murder or anything like that. But he will go to jail for that. And I don't know how he can argue against it, right? Because a cop can't just fire blindly. I still don't.
Not only did he fire blindly, he shot into the neighboring apartment. Like, that's the definition of wanton endangerment. Like, dude wasn't even firing into the right field of view. I mean, that's pretty bad. So yeah, that dude's going to go to jail. How long, we don't know. It's not enough to appease the mob, which is sad. But then again, the mob pretty much wasn't going to be appeased unless someone was charged with murder.
Yeah,
Didn't have to actually come back guilty.
And
just had to be indicted with murder, because the grand jury isn't determining guilt or innocence. They're just determining if it's worth taking to court.
Yeah.
So
I still believe that the best charge they could have done was if they could determine whose bullets was those people should have been charged with manslaughter. I still think that's the most reasonable charge in this case. Minimum for me is reckless endangerment.
And they may have gone for that, but the grand jury came back with
no indictment. They've said that the grand jury may come back later. I do think the Kentucky Attorney General, by sending it,
do we know? The question I have is, do we know what charges the grand jury was reviewing? Because we know they were going after wanton endangerment because they came back with an indictment on that. But do we know any
my
of the
knowledge,
other
the way
charges?
it was stated, the way I heard it, is that they presented the evidence to the grand jury and then allowed the grand jury to decide what indictments on what charges for whom based on that evidence. That the Attorney General did not recommend any specific charges, that they just said, here is the evidence that we have in whatever forms we have it. You guys review it, and based on the counsel of the judge and everybody else in the case, you guys return with what you think are reasonable indictments based off this information. Again, I think that's when we talk about the government in action, to me, that's as good as you can get it, because he took the burden off of his hands. He said, you know what, look, I may be biased in this case, so I'm going to send it to these people who are more likely to share the views of the common people in the area and allow them to make that decision, which
is a whole bunch different than the situation that went down in Omaha.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
I heard about the guy ended up killing himself, ended up committing suicide.
Yep. So, gentleman's dad gets into an altercation outside of their bar with it's Black Lives Matter or Antifa. They're synonymous at this time in my mind. Prove me wrong. And not that the father should have been in an altercation. No excuse there. But the son comes out and says, hey, leave him alone, back up, just let him go. They won't do it. He doesn't brandish his firearm, but he pulls up his shirt to show that he is armed. He goes, let him go. Let's just walk away. They don't do so. They come after and attack the son. The son, still trying to back away, gets attacked and is on the ground in a chokehold, takes his pistol out, reaches over his shoulder, or takes it out and puts it on the other shoulder, reaches over and shoots the guy, hits him in the clavicle, and kills him. The DA originally comes back and says clear-cut self-defense, no charge. But then the mob sits there and just goes after him and after him and after him and after him. And after so many days, he acquiesces, or whatever that word is. He caves, for lack of better terms, to the mob and the mob mentality. And he charges him with homicide. I think it was homicide. It might have been manslaughter, whatever it may be. Never got to court, but because of all the situations that went down, he lost his bar. Like the landlord kicked him out of his lease, lost his bar, lost his job, lost pretty much everything, and somehow ended up in Portland and killed himself there. I don't know if he was going to Portland to try to take it out on Antifa because that's where their headquarters are, or what the deal was, but they pretty much ruined the young man's life. And he was, 2-tour veteran. He, been overseas 2 different times. And because of all this, he lost everything and didn't see a way out and contributed to the 22 a day. So at least this DA isn't caving to the mob pressure.
AG. This was handled by the state AG.
Sorry, my bad. Thank you for the correction. At least this AG didn't cave to the mob and the mob mentality and follow the justice protocols the way they're set forth and let them play through the way they're supposed to play through. We'll see what ends up happening, but at least at this time, it appears that justice was served in the correct way. Not saying what happened was right, but when you look at the evidence and when you look at what happened and when you put it forth to a jury of 12, the jury of 12 came back and said, this is the charge that we can see at this time. Again, more evidence may come to light. More things might come out. But at this, and like you say, like I say, we reserve the right to change our opinion. But when new evidence comes to light, our opinion's going to change based on said evidence.
Yeah, I mean, and again, if somebody can prove to me that he knew they were the cops, that he said "fuck you pigs" and and then started shooting or something like that. If the body cam footage shows that, says that, okay, I'll happily understand. I'll say at that point, yeah, he brought it on himself. But as of right now, for lack of that information, for lack of that knowledge, I'm gonna say that he was defending himself and that he had a right to do so. I don't and when you're talking about self-defense, you have to ask who is the aggressor. We talked about this with Ahmaud Arbery. You have to ask who is the aggressor, who is the aggressee. The person with the right to self-defense is the person who's the aggressee, not the aggressor. If you're the one running after me, I am now defending myself. You can't. So if you're beating down my door, coming into my house, I am the aggressee in this case. I am not the aggressor. You are violating my rights. I am not violating yours. So had he run out the door and gotten a fist fight and started shooting cops, then we could have a conversation. But as he was in his house and standing his ground and fired one shot before they emptied their magazines into a room that they couldn't see inside of, I'm going to argue that the cops violated his right to self-defense. And I whether he was white, black, Hispanic, a former criminal, a suspected criminal, that doesn't take away his right to self-defense, in my point of view.
No.
So let's get to talking about somebody else's rights being violated, our president's rights being violated with an investigation.
Which one?
So we now have
at this point you can't just say with an investigation.
So
the Democrats have pulled so much bullshit that you've got to specify, buddy.
Yeah, so the original, the OG investigation, right? He's a Russian agent investigation. So
okay.
News coming out today that the subsource for the Steele dossier, the one Steele relied on for all the information about Trump and in Russia. So probably the PP information, the banking information, the contacts to oligarchs, Don Jr. meeting with so and so.
Real quick, I want to make one small interjection on that one. Do you think that if the PP thing was real, because supposedly they have video, if you think if that was real, that shit wouldn't have been released by now? 3 years into the presidency, almost 4, guaranteed that would have come up during the campaign. I don't know why I just sounded Cajun, but I did. But yeah, there's no way in hell the Democrats hold on to that for 3 years. Just like there's no way in hell the Democrats held on to him calling the fallen soldiers losers and chumps for 2 years. That shit didn't happen. That is a made-up bullshit story that the Democrats are trying to run right before an election to try to sway voters. Now, if they want to really sway voters and they really want to do something, all they got to do is point to what happened yesterday with him not 100% agreeing that if he loses the election, there's going to be a peaceful transfer of power. And good Lord, was that the talking point of the day to day, at least every time I got on social media. But yeah, okay, so we're going to go back to Russia. Russia.
So, I asked Dan about this when we talked to him, a couple months back. He's like, dude, does anybody still believe this on the left? Like, is there? And apparently there are still the diehards, right? There are still the Trump's a Russian agent diehards. Well, we find out today that not only is Trump not a Russian agent, right, but that the people that they relied on, from Kimberly Strassel, getting this information from Catherine Herridge of CBS News, formerly of Fox News, one of the best actual reporters that you can follow. So if you're going to follow somebody, those are the ones to follow. The subsource for the documentation was investigated by the FBI for being a Russian spy, trying to get his...
Takes one to know one is what they're trying to say.
The subsource, the guy giving them the information, is a guy who's a Russian spy. The FBI knew this, but yet did not disclose any of this in the FISA applications. That the source of the information that they're using to grant a FISA application is, in fact, a Russian spy. And none of this is released on the Carter Page FISA applications. None of this is released until just now when we find this out. And that says, you know what? Again, how much more information do we need to prove that this was a crock of crap investigation? And when will the left finally agree that it's over?
They're never going to, and I'll give you 100% reason why. The media has determined the narrative, and they're not going to give it up. Just like the media has this narrative with Pelosi on Sunday when she did the reboot. They're the ones that planted the impeachment, the option for impeachment. Yep. It wasn't Pelosi. Pelosi didn't mention that. Now, she didn't say she wasn't going to, but Stephanopoulos actually said, "Are you going to impeach him? Maybe that would be a great idea to hold things up." Stephanopoulos planted that into the news cycle, and now it's being talked about. AOC comes out and says, "Oh yeah, that's something we'll definitely talk about." And then yesterday, they asked a very leading question to Trump, and I'm surprised they don't do this more often. Ask a very, very leading question, getting Trump off guard, and then him answering the way he's going to answer, because he's a proud person. He's not going to admit that he has a chance of losing. In his mind, he's got this election 100% in the bag. And that's how you've got to act. You've got to act like you're going to win, or you will lose. If you're acting defeated, people will pick up on that, and people will know that you don't think you have a chance, or that you're not 100% confident in yourself. And that comes off, and people can see that, understand that in the way you're saying things, and it turns people off. And they won't vote for you because they think that you think that you're a loser. So why should I vote for you if you don't even think yourself as a winner? So the media is shaping the narrative. They did it yesterday. They did it Sunday. They've done it so many times. They're planting what they want the story to be so that the story happens, and then they can report about it because they know it's going to be massive ratings for them if they can get that into the news cycle.
I agree. And there's just so much. So we had a Senate report come out the other day that basically looked at Hunter Biden, looked at Joe Biden and their ties to Ukraine, their ties to Russia, their ties to China. What we found out is that Hunter Biden has gotten $3.5 million from the wife of the mayor of Moscow, which
Ex-wife.
I heard she was the wife of the former mayor.
Okay, I read it as she was the ex-wife of the mayor.
So either which way, that means he's getting money from somebody highly associated with Vladimir Putin. And that money didn't come directly to him. It was funneled through multiple sources, and they've got all the links of where the money went and how much and when. That it was wire transferred to here and then to there. That's also called money laundering, if you've ever not known that.
And then there was some ladies of the night.
I wouldn't call it lady of the night. I would call it sex trafficking. Would be the correct word.
Well, and I was going to say who are more than likely human trafficked, and
payments to
supposedly several of them under the age of 18.
Yep. There's also information that not only did all of this occur, but that Joe Biden, while vice president, knew of and allowed it to occur. That he was multiple times informed that there was a possible conflict of interest of Hunter Biden being on the Burisma board, and yet specifically ensured that when they went to Ukraine, that language was used to not implicate Hunter Biden or Hunter Biden's boss in any kind of anti-corruption things.
And potentially, not even potentially, assuredly, and made sure that the person who was investigating Burisma
was fired
and Hunter got fired. And that is what they use as grounds for impeachment.
So there's also some money coming out of China, which we already knew about, but we know more about it now.
And you know what's even more hilarious is I saw a New York Times article yesterday saying that Biden wasn't implicated in anything for that investigation. Now, I guess I can get around that by saying it was Joe Biden didn't get implicated in anything particularly, but Hunter sure as hell was.
So here's the thing about that. If you're going to say that Joe Biden commit a specific crime, okay, you can say Joe Biden did not commit a specific crime. But did Joe Biden use his position as the vice president of the United States in order to gain leverage for his son in his international business dealings and to allow his son in that time to commit crimes while he was the vice president and avoid scrutiny by being the vice president? Yes. So
100%.
Did Joe Biden commit a crime? No. Does Joe Biden deserve to be in government and be in control and be in charge any longer or anymore or ever again? No. So if you want to claim that President Trump is utilizing his position to benefit his kids or his son-in-law or whatever, it's always funny to me that they say, well, Trump's using the presidency to enrich himself, and then we'll turn around and say, yeah, Trump has lost money since being president. If he's using the presidency to enrich himself, why is he losing money? That doesn't make any sense, right?
They're going to go, well, how many times did you file bankruptcy?
Again,
and you just got to remind them that bankruptcy is not necessarily a
GM filed bankruptcy, had plenty of money in the bank. GM didn't. I'm sorry. Ford filed bankruptcy. It's just a debt situation.
Restructuring, it's a tool to restructure your debt, which is honestly what Trump is pissed off about as being president, is that he can't restructure the U.S. debt because the man is how many times? 5, 6, 9? I can't remember the number of times, but the man knows how to utilize the tax code to or the codes on the books in order to restructure debt. And he's frustrated because if it would have been his company, he had done filed bankruptcy 3-4 times already.
Yeah.
And gotten our debt restructured and now that the interest rates are lower and lower and lower, would have refinanced that sum down a couple more times. But he is beholden to the current debt, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's to the point where we need to understand what we can do about it. We need to understand what is available. And what we can know is that Joe Biden has consistently used his position to enrich himself, to enrich his family. Joe Biden was poor when he became a senator and is rich now. Trump was rich when he became president and is poorer now. So if you're saying that Trump is using the presidency to enrich himself, it's not a very good argument. If you're saying that Joe Biden has not enriched himself while being a senator and or vice president, or utilized it to enrich his kids' lives, that's also not a very valid argument. So it's time that we actually call an apple and an orange. We now can see almost definitively, other than the homers who are going to just, they're never going to let this go, right? Trump's a Russian agent. They're sure of it. The tin foil is whispering into their brain and telling them it's the truth. And God damn it, it's the truth. He has to be. It can't be because Hillary didn't go to Wisconsin in 2016 ever. It has to be because
I had fun with that today on Facebook. There was someone we need to abolish the electoral college. It's disenfranchising voters from these small rural areas. And I'm like,
no, it's exactly the opposite.
What? How are you, how do you grasp at that straw? Because I guarantee you're wrong. Yeah. Because if North and South Dakota, let's just take those two states as an example, weren't in the electoral college, guess how many times people would show up to North and South Dakota other than to see Mount Rushmore?
It would be very, very few.
It's about as many times as Hillary Clinton showed up to Wisconsin in 2016.
Yeah. So the Electoral College was specifically put in place to give small states some power over large populous areas. It's like people not understanding, because I don't get how the Senate gets to pick judges. I mean, they're not representative of the people. They're not. They're representative of the states. 2 per state. I literally had a guy try to argue to me that senators were elected in gerrymandered districts. And I was like,
yeah, I mean,
unless you're calling state lines.
The state lines were drawn. Some of those were kind of gerrymandered.
Have they been changed in the last 150 years?
No.
I mean,
well, yes. Alaska was added. So was Hawaii. Technically, that's a redrawing of the district.
But none of the states that already existed had their borders redrawn. Correct. Since Virginia split into Virginia and West Virginia, have any states had their borders redrawn?
What about and I'm asking because I don't know the answer here. I'm legitimately asking. North and South Dakota.
We're always 2 separate states.
Okay, that's
North and South Carolina were always 2 separate states.
I knew that one because they both
their original 13 colonies.
13 colonies?
So
I knew that.
Okay, for those of you who don't know or aren't sure, senators are a statewide election, just like a governor.
And they used to be
appointed by the governor.
Governor.
But now it's direct elect. So it used to be appointed by the governor. The governor was the only statewide election. Whoever the governor was, because I mean it's essentially going to track, right? If you're voting for a governor and that guy wins in a statewide election, that party wins, and typically that party is going to win a statewide election for Senate. That's typically the truth. But, we went to direct election of senators, which, okay, fine. I have no problem with that. But you can't argue that the senators are elected through the gerrymandered districts. You can argue that all day with congressmen, but it's always funny that the left will always argue gerrymandering, other than the fact that the left also gerrymanders districts. California has some super gerrymandered shit. Listen, districts are drawn by the party that's in power, and the Supreme Court has found that is constitutionally correct. That the party in power gets to draw the map however the hell they please. We just had a Supreme Court case about that last year, where
as long as it is not racially motivated,
as long as it is not specifically to disenfranchise a certain segment of voters, yes. As long as there is a legitimate reason for it, then fine.
Although you could claim theoretically, which is you're really grasping that if you are disenfranchising a Democrat, Is that not still disenfranchising a voter?
So the point is that both parties do it, right? It
all the time.
happens all the time. It's on both sides. Democrat states.
It's gonna be real interesting to see what happens after the 2020 census goes official, because Texas is gaining 2 seats, 1 seat,
Texas is gaining 1 now because of some changes,
and California is losing like 3.
yeah, there's a few there because they're no longer able to count non-citizens.
Yeah, so it's going to make things very interesting to see how they're going to fit that new district into Texas, how they're going to redo California's lack of representatives. You know, it's going to be very interesting to watch. Was it going to be 2021, 2022 when the districts start getting redistrict, or the state starts getting redistrict? And I guarantee, you're going to see a lot of pissed off people bitching about Texas and then saying not a damn word about California.
Yeah, exactly. The Republicans are going to bitch about the left, and the left's going to bitch about the right. Holy crap! Shocking. So Dan, you bring up a good point, because this is something that's currently happening. So they're basically, the left knows that they have no way of blocking Trump's new Supreme Court pick, which we should find out about Saturday. He will supposedly going to announce and officially nominate the new Supreme Court nomination on Saturday, so there's an interesting discussion. Well, he has to get this done before November 3rd. No.
Why?
He doesn't have to get this done before November 3rd. He has to get this done before January 20th. January 20th is when the new president will be inaugurated.
Wait. Dan, John, did you move? I thought you were in Jersey.
No, he moved to Texas
New
like
England.
6 months ago. That's why he quit watching our show.
Oh, okay.
That's why he didn't watch for a while, because he was moving. But the point is that, you know, the left is now saying, fine, you're going to get this Supreme Court justice, but it doesn't matter because we're just going to pack the court once we get power back.
Yeah, we're going to go nuclear on you. We're going to make it 13 judges when we take power.
People really didn't like when they said, well, this is all the Republicans' fault. And I said, no. Actually, this is Obama's fault, because Obama.
This is Harry Reid. This is Harry Reid's
who did
fault.
it at the direction of President Obama, who praised it publicly that he nuked the filibuster for judicial nominations. Now, he nuked it for lower court nominations, not Supreme Court nominations. I'll give him that. But McConnell said at the time, this is going to bite you in the ass. I'm going to get you with this, right? Like, you've done it. You've set the precedent that it can be done now. So what's going to keep me from doing it later? And even Trump today came out and said, thank you, Harry Reid. I hope you're having a good night wherever you are. Ultimate troll.
Did Harry Reid retire, or did he get
he
retired?
He did retire. He had been a long time senator, and he retired. So if you want to bitch at somebody, if you're on the left, you want to bitch at somebody, go bitch at Harry Reid, because Harry Reid nuked the filibuster, which gave Mitch McConnell the right to nuke the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations, which means there's not a damn thing the left can do to stop this nomination other than get 4 Republicans to vote against it. Because, as I tweeted the other day, maybe this is a good time to remind you that there's not 100 votes in the Senate. There's 101 votes in the Senate.
Yes, a lot of people forget about that. All right, I had a question. Oh, yes. If you really want to blame somebody for the issue that is happening right this second.
Good.
And I give her 100% props for trying to hold on as long as she did. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself is at blame for this, because she had the option to retire. No one forced her to keep the seat until she actually died.
She could have retired under the Obama
administration. And Obama was in office for 8 years. she could have retired in year 7 and been replaced. But the Democrat Party were so sure of themselves that they were going to win
Hillary was going to win
2016 that she was too proud to allow Obama to replace her. She wanted another, since a Clinton appointed her, she wanted a Clinton to replace her.
Which, okay, that was her prerogative. It was a bad one, but it was her prerogative. That's what she decided. Philip, I'm going to need you to clarify, forced to keep your income tax.
All Are you talking about? Are you talking about Social Security and
You talking about the holiday
Medicare?
tax window? I'm sorry, the payroll tax holiday that Trump sent. I'm confused. So yeah, Trump's going to get a
A
nomination
lot
here,
of
but
people, yeah, a lot of people are upset because if Trump doesn't win after 2017 or 2021, we've said 2016 so many times, 2021 rolls over and the uh, payroll tax goes back into place, and Biden's probably going to increase it
you got
even.
to pay all that
Now they're
back.
going
Yeah,
to have to pay
it was a
back
holiday. It
all
wasn't
that.
Trump. Trump cannot by executive order get rid of a tax. It's illegal.
No.
Right? Only Congress has the right to levy taxes, which means they're also the only ones that have the right to not levy taxes. So what he did was give you a holiday, saying the IRS was not going to collect it for this period of time. Not that you don't have to pay it, because that would be illegal for him to do. He cannot do that without Congress, without an act of Congress. So what he said is, okay, we're not going to collect it for this period of time. Now, if you're a smart man, what you do is you take that money and you put it in an interest-bearing account that is a low risk account, and then you keep the interest.
It's like you read what I put in the chat.
Yeah, gain some interest on it. Yeah. I didn't see the chat till just now. But anyway, so the left is now going full hog, right? So they keep the Republicans are changing our democracy and they're going to destroy it to where we can never win again. But yet we're going to make DC and Puerto Rico states so that the right can never win again.
This is what aggravates me about the word democracy. The Democrats are democratic, and they're all about democracy because they understand that when you go to a democracy, you are now mob rule. Whoever has the most votes wins overall. What people fail to realize is we do not live in a democracy. The word democracy does not show up in the Constitution, not one time. We live in a constitutional republic. That doesn't mean we're Republican. It means it's a republic.
A representative republic. Constitutional representative republic.
Each state has a voice. Mm-hmm. If they weren't guaranteed a voice, they would not have joined the union in the first place.
This was a compromise. The bicameral solution in Congress, right, was a compromise between the small states and the big states in the original Constitution, because small states like Rhode Island, Delaware, New Hampshire were very concerned that states like Georgia, New York, and the Carolinas would, simply due to larger populations, be able to enforce their will. So non-slave states were worried that slave states, due to the larger population, because of even with the 3/5 compromise, slave states still got a larger apportionment when it came to elected officials, because it was one representative at the time per 1,000 individuals in the state. So because we were allowed to count slaves as 3/5 members, and because Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina were all much larger states than New Hampshire, Delaware, you simply were going to have much more people. And because Delaware, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, these other states did not have slaves, were slaveless states, or less slavery. They weren't slaveless. Let's be honest. The free states were not without slaves. They just were with many less slaves. That meant that basically Georgia and those slave states would have been able to outvote and basically enact their will at any point in time. That there would have been no way to end anything, to do anything on those small state side. So the Senate was the compromise. Okay, we're going to have 2 per state. And then the filibuster was to even further empower the minority, was saying that if you're in the minority, or if you just don't like a bill, you can filibuster it, and it now takes a supermajority to get it passed. So that it's not simply just, oh, well, if there's more southern states than there are northern states, then the southern states still win. Those states could still have a right in that system. It was empowering the minority. A democracy is power to the majority. The majority always wins. It takes a simple majority and a democracy, and that always wins. Whereas in
and Dan, real quick, Ross, sorry, Dan, the Republicans didn't actually exist during this time that Ross is talking about. It was the Whips and the Federalists and the Democrats. So there were more parties back then. They typically reduced down to 2 like we see today, but the Republican Party did not come about until Lincoln, pretty much. When Lincoln was the first national Republican. Before that, the Republicans had never won any major office. So the Republicans are actually a newer party, especially compared to the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has been here since the beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The Democrat Party has been around. A Democrat Party has been around since the beginning, but their stances has drastically changed from what it used to be.
We could argue on that one too, because it seems like they've always been about the party of controlling the minority population one way or the other.
It's always been the party that's
slavery
allowed
or-
for government violation of individual liberties, whether that was for generally for people they don't like, right? So at the time it was Black Americans, slave Americans, and now it's conservatives and people who speak out against racial injustice. They've always been the party that has wanted more government control, whereas the Republicans, the Whigs, have always been the Federalists have always been the party of more individual liberty, less government control, less government imposition on the people, so that we could actually what things require a 2/3 vote from the Senate.
Great way to not finish that sentence.
I just thought across. So, two-thirds vote from the Senate is override of a veto, and to pass a constitutional amendment. So it takes a simple majority.
Override. Well, back in the day, override a
no,
filibuster.
60. It's 60 for override a filibuster.
Okay.
So it's
so
it's
two-thirds,
three
that wouldn't quite be
fifths. It's 3/5 to override a veto. It's 2/3 to I'm sorry. It's 3/5 to and it's a simple majority to vote to convict on an impeachment. You only needed 50, right? So it was never going to happen. Or wait, I might be actually. I think it might be 60.
No, it was. I'm pretty sure it was 50 because of the fact that they were worried when Romney flipped. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been worried.
I'm not sure about that.
There wasn't any Democrats.
It does require a two-thirds vote of the Senate to convict and the penalty of an impeachment. Yep. Okay. So 2/3 is required in impeachment, which is why there was never a chance that they were going to get to 66, right? And now
okay, my bad. The reason they were so
because they didn't get a 100% consensus among Republicans.
Yeah, because it wasn't bipartisan.
They then said that the impeachment was a bipartisan issue, that Republicans and Democrats both agreed that Trump should have been impeached and convicted, and that's okay.
You flipped one, that doesn't count.
Yeah,
especially when it's Romney.
So, yeah, we really need to be worried about the left saying they're going to pack the courts. We've already had
should
one constitutional amendment has already been submitted to set the number of justices on the court to 9, but the chances of it getting passed.
Here's a good question for you. Here's a good question for you. If that amendment doesn't pass, which
it won't,
more than likely it won't, because it's freaking impossible at this point.
Yeah.
Should Trump then take the onus and do what the Democrats were trying to do and pack the court up to 13? Use their own playbook against them?
So my question was, how long is it before we're just all Supreme Court justices, right? Like
you graduate from college, you graduate from law school, and you're automatically a Supreme Court justice.
You pass your bar exam, and you go straight to the Senate for confirmation to the Supreme Court. That every lawyer in the country should be on the Supreme Court, because I mean, once you break that seal, right? It's like when you're drunk and you really got to piss. As long as you don't start pissing, you can hold it.
Oh dear God!
But once you start pissing, once the seal is broken, you can't. You have no control over it anymore. Your body goes into an autonomous function, and you are going to piss. And if that means in a toilet, that means in a toilet. If that means in your pants, in your pants. So you're doing everything in your power just to stop the flow from starting. Once the seal is broken, and FDR tried this. Once the seal is broken, it's not going to stop, right? Because a packed court can be repacked and unpacked and it's just every time a president needs to win a case, he's just going to pack the court in his favor if he has the Senate, right? Because we've nuked the filibuster to Supreme Court nominees, it's nothing to stop it, right? So, and I mean, you could say, well, we could put the filibuster back. Well, they'll just vote to remove it again. That's all they're gonna do. We could put the filibuster back. They're just gonna vote to remove it again. you know, it's you know, it's just one of those things where we're past that point now. Trump could do it, but let's say he appoints 5 today. They're just going to appoint 10 if they win it in January and they win the Senate. That's why it's very, like, everybody's talking about the presidential race right now, and the presidential race is very important. I want Trump to win. I definitely think Trump should win, but we got to make sure we maintain the majority in the Senate, because at least we can slow down. Now, they would need a constitutional amendment to make D.C. a state, because D.C. is set in the Constitution to not be allowed to be a state. So it would take a constitutional amendment.
They don't think so, though.
That's
They
fine,
think they
but
can do
the
it.
Supreme Court could then rule on that because it is a constitutional issue. So that's something the Supreme Court would be allowed to rule on. And yes,
Puerto Rico, though, is a whole different
Puerto
ballgame.
Rico, Guam, all those territories could be added, and if they were added as states, would be allowed to have 2 senators. But that also comes with statehood comes other things that we then have to do. And there's things in Puerto Rico where people in Puerto Rico don't want statehood. They get very low turnout for those elections, those referendums. And I think if you had one that was actually a possibility, people thought it was actually going to happen, you'd see high turnout with people saying, we don't want to become a state. We want to maintain some level of independence upon ourselves.
There's Philip, there's a article or provision within the Constitution that sets aside a square district of 16 by 16 miles or something
the
of that nature.
The federal seat cannot be housed inside of a state, so that the state has no leverage over the federal government. So
that is why DC should not be a state, and why it can't be a state per the Constitution. Doesn't mean the Democrats won't try.
Yeah, so to keep a governor from being able to say, oh, well, if the president doesn't do what I want, then I'm going to, revoke his or fine him or something. They said, okay, the federal government will own this land. It will be owned by the federal government. It will be fully part of the federal government, which is why there technically is a governor of D.C. He's just appointed by the president. I
know there's a mayor. I didn't know there was a governor. Yeah,
there's a quote-unquote governor, right? It's not an elected position. It's an appointed position. It's part of it's not called the governor, but it essentially acts as the governor of D.C., being that person is in charge of the D.C. National Guard. So it's typically a military leader. Yeah, the federal government owns D.C., and for D.C. to become a state, you would need a constitutional amendment saying that this clause in the Constitution is no longer true or valid, and that we're going to remove it from the Constitution. And I don't think you're going to find many Supreme Court justices that would be willing to override that, because it's clearly written. There's no interpretation to it. It's clearly stated in the Constitution. You'd have to find some super activist judges that would be willing to get that. Yeah, Dan, that's true. Because, I mean, what the forefathers wrote in there, so a guy today was arguing with me that that when the government comes knocking, we got to lay down. And I said, the Constitution specifically gives us the right to defend ourselves against a corrupt government, right? That's part of the Second Amendment, is that we have the right to defend ourselves against a corrupt government.
And 16 by 16 square is not that big when you consider like how big Virginia is, how big Maryland is, which are the 2 states that border it. So it's not really that big of a landmass, but it's big enough that it has its autonomy. So because you want it to be autonomous, you don't want it to have to rely on any other state. Because if it has to rely on another state,
then it's beholden.
Then that undue influence could occur.
So I think we need to take a moment, Kyle, to say congratulations to one of our listeners who,
I was going to say, we've got an Olympian watching.
Recently shot the best rounds of his life and still didn't win.
Still 125 out of 125, followed up with 123 out of 125.
And lost.
He came in second.
And lost.
But I don't think he came in second because of how he did overall. It was the playoffs or the shoot-off.
I just want to give him some shit.
The metal,
Philip,
the metal,
we are very proud of you. Great job. I called you, but you don't ever answer my phone calls anymore. I guess I don't rate on this side.
He only answers if it says Booger or
Yeah.
Philip's boss.
I'm gonna go onto one of those like prank calls where you can call from like random numbers and just put it in as Charles's number, and I'll call him that way. That way he'll maybe pick up. Yeah, 373. You got a 375. So
who the guy who won? What did he? Oh, second in finals. What did the guy that won shoot? That's what I want to know.
So for anybody who's watching this show, Philip, who's commenting on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, you can't see the comments that we're reading off. They're commenting on YouTube. That's why we multi-stream. We stream to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, so we have viewers on both sides. So if you're watching this post-fact, then yeah, it might be a little confusing. Philip Youngman, who's a good family friend of ours, we like to play Angry Birds in real life with him. We have literally launched birds at him out of a slingshot. Is an Olympian. He will go to the Olympics in Tokyo to represent the United States as a shotgun shooter and shooting international
with a fresh back.
He's well rested in his back apparently. That was my number one comment to Dad. I guess his back injury's healed because I mean. Yeah.
See that's Philip. That doesn't make any damn sense to me. How you shot a 248 and he shot a 240 and you lost.
Once you get in the top 6, man, it starts over. Top 6.
I know
it sucks, but them's the rules, boss. It's like NASCAR. You just gotta make the final 12. Once you make the final 12, all bets are off. We start from scratch. So, well, it's the same for NFL or NBA.
I guess it's just like the playoffs in basketball. You know, if you make the top 64 teams and then the NCAA, everyone's got a fair chance. You might be up against the odds as a 16 seed, but you've got a chance.
Yeah. So for those of you, again, who are watching who are fresh to our channel, because I have sent this out on Facebook to several new groups. If you're watching, Philip is an Olympian. Go follow him on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, wherever he has his shit. Put it in the comments there, Philip.
And the Army Marksmanship Unit as well, which he is a member of.
Army AMU, yep, which he is a member of. So, he's a good kid. Not the brightest bulb, not the sharpest crayon, but he shoots.
He married up, though.
Well, for all of us, that's the truth, sir. There's not one of us who can claim any different. So, guys, other than that, I mean, God, man, there's so much shit going on. I mean, more coming out on Obamagate, more coming out on Hunter Biden's relationships in Ukraine and Russia. Donald Trump Jr. is having a effing field day. So Instagram at Philip Youngman. Yeah. So if you're on Instagram, if you're one of them Facebooky people who does Instagram, you can go to at Philip Youngman, JUNGMAN. Hey,
we've got an Instagram now too.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, I told you about that.
You said we could post on Instagram from Facebook, and
you go to pages. If you go to pages,
dude,
and you make a post, you can go to it'll go to both.
I genuinely do not care about Facebook whatsoever. Facebook to me is only because you asked me to get a Facebook so that I could help with the page, and I post something there like once every 2 weeks, and that's about it.
Hey, we gotta grow our audience. The more the audience grows, the better viewership we get. The better viewership we get.
You handle Facebook. You handle Facebook. I'll handle Twitter. Which I think, if you look at my tweets in the last 6 months, number of tweets in the last 6 months versus your number of tweets in the last 6 months, I think we can say that I'm the one handling Twitter.
Yeah, you're definitely handling that hands over fist. Maybe too much. I think you live on there.
There are days there's days I got to just like actively put the phone down, and I usually tweet about it.
I've got to
Unicorn story time.
I've got to remind myself to go.
General Order number 6 came out today.
I can't remember what that is.
He said it came out today. So, shit. I was like General Order 3.
It's been a hot minute.
Hold on. General Order 6. What is the 6th? To receive, obey, and pass on to the sentry who relieves me all orders from the commanding officer. Oh. Okay. That's Naval ROGTZ.
Phil Hub, what the hell do you mean by that?
Yeah. I mean, we only ever worried about the first 3 general orders. I knew there were more, but,
honestly don't remember ever having to deal with 1 through 3 while I was
Well,
in.
I never had to
So
deal with them, but we had to learn them in basic training. Like we had to know what they were.
yeah,
Like
but after
I will not leave my post until properly relieved, and I will, upon relief, commit, infer the information of my orders into the relief and ensure the relief is aware of all order. Blah blah blah. I can't remember it now, but something of that sounds ominous, or maybe a meal at a beard game week. Jimmy Gibson.
Who said that? Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Wish you had such a nice beard, Jimmy.
Jimmy Beard. Buddy, come on. Don't hate on the neck beards, all right? The neck beard game is strong over here. All right? See, look at all that neck beard. Look at it. So, yeah, that's Ross.
Oh, he said to Ross. Ha! Yes.
What? There's sir.
Your beard has actually come in pretty well of late. I'll give you that.
Jimmy. I'm gonna have to put you.
Hey, Jimmy,
I'm gonna put you back in your self-propelled wheelchair, sir.
Over on YouTube, which we're also streaming live too. We've got Philip Youngman commenting. So if you want to go talk to a Olympian, there's your chance.
So Jimmy says nothing on top. I actually need a haircut. If you can't tell, it's about
time. It sounds ominous.
Yeah, it's about time.
Or maybe a meal at a Chinese buffet.
Or maybe a meal at a Chinese buffet. I'd like the General So number 6. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we can go to
restaurants finally. We can go on leave finally.
There you go, Philip.
Yay.
There you go. So come back to Texas, buddy.
So Philip, you gonna come see me in Bryan College Station here soon, buddy?
Nice. You can come dove hunting out in West Texas. Lots of white wings out here to go shoot at.
Got a decent amount in this area now. Not as much as you.
Dude, I haven't been lately. Dove hunting is rarely a sport I participate in because I don't like getting shot at by drunk people. We've had that conversation, but I do hopefully am gonna get to at least get some goose hunting in this year. Need to. Let's talk for a second, and I know there's gonna be people who don't care, but let's talk for a second about number one.
The Hall.
What?
The Haw part of our name, him and Haw.
No, let's talk about
Hunt, ammo, and whiskey.
let's talk about the fact that the Cowboys somehow won on Sunday after being down by 20 points with the greatest onside kick I've ever seen in my life. That
I was gonna say the worst onside kick coverage I've ever seen in my life.
You can say it however you want, sir. It worked. That's the only thing.
It worked.
That's the only thing you have to worry about is the fact that it worked. I don't know what the hell. He kicks the ball like a top, essentially. It spins for an hour, and then magically...
Why the Falcons didn't just jump on it?
Yeah. That's... So here's my opinion there, right? Because once they touch it, the ball is live, right? The ball is not live until...
But they're the good hands team.
Okay, so do you remember way back when in the MLB playoffs, I think it was Arizona versus New York, the Diamondbacks versus New York, where the Diamondbacks actually beat the Yankees in the World Series. The Diamondback players bunted one down the third base line, and the third baseman, it just kept rolling. And the third baseman for the Yankees, and it was a scoring play, right? Like the runner scored, or he could throw to first, and it would have been the third out, either one. And he just let it roll, and it just kept rolling, like figuring, okay, it's gonna go foul eventually, and because he couldn't get to it in time. If it would have gone foul, right, then the play's dead. But the ball never went foul. I think the Falcons, because if you look at the trajectory of how he kicked the ball, there's definitely a parabolic arc to it, right? The ball starts out really flat, and it doesn't look like it's going to go 10 yards. And then it gets about, and if it goes out of bounds before it goes 10 yards, then it's Falcons ball right there. So they've got everything to reason that because if they touch it and they're not able to secure it, it's a live ball. The Cowboys can pick it up. So in my mind, what they're thinking is that the ball is not going to make it to 10 yards. It's going to die or go out of bounds before it makes it to 10 yards. So we're not going to touch it. And then all of a sudden, it turns and goes upfield. And by that time, there's a Cowboys player just sitting there ready to grab it. But we have to talk about the fact that the Cowboys were down by 20. Even me, who is a diehard Cowboys fan, was ready to turn the TV off about 3 different times. And for all of you who keep saying, well, Dak Prescott's not a franchise quarterback, he can't perform in the clutch, he brought him back from down 20.
Yeah, that was impressive.
No interceptions.
And Jimmy Gibson, you're about to get muted saying that NCAA sports are trash. can't actually. I don't know. How
I
to
think
read
he's just
people,
saying
but
all
if I
sports. He said
could,
NFL is trash, NCAA sports trash. So I mean, I think he's
I
saying.
didn't disagree with you on that, sir.
I think he's just saying all sports.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, that was crazy. And then to go back to your example of a ball spinning down third base line, I've actually seen the reverse of that, where the ball was foul.
And then came
All
back.
all the third baseman had to do was pick it up. He ignored it, and it rolled back in and became a live ball.
Yeah, I've seen that too. So if you touch the ball when it's foul,
if you have the opportunity to get an out, you get an out. If you have an opportunity to make it foul, you make it foul.
So, guys, there's competing conversations between Facebook and YouTube right now, just so y'all know. So we're laughing at